we could almost say that civilization itself didn't really start until Bitcoin. Because we
Yeah,
always
that's
had, as we were talking offline, again, if your tax rate is 100%, then you are by definition a slave, right? All the
exactly.
fruits of your labor go to someone else, go to a tax
Yeah.
authority. Well, today we all have some tax burden. We all have some percentage effective tax rate. So everyone in the world is some percentage of a slave to the state.
Yeah.
And it's all because we don't have Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is what fixes all that. It's this, which is something we want to get into now. Like, it's the ultimate property, ultimate form of ownership.
Yeah, the first form of ownership, even.
Yeah.
That reminds me, one of my most popular tweets ever was exactly that. Bitcoin is not a threat to civilization; it's the beginning of civilization, to civilized society, the beginning of civilized society. Uh, anyway, yeah, to your point there about slavery, you can also view it as a partial death sentence, since someone is stealing your time. And this is one of the things I get into in the book, like the importance of time and the scarcity of time, how that drives everything. Because the limitations of your days on this earth is what gives your life value and meaning. There's nothing else. If you were immortal and indestructible, so you would live forever, then you could always postpone every action till later. And then you wouldn't have to take any action, and you wouldn't have to interact with other people at all, and you wouldn't have to do anything. You wouldn't have to make any moral decisions. You wouldn't have to make, there would be no value in anything, no trade-offs. And which means that everything would have an infinitely low value. And when you have a strictly limited amount of time, everything can have a theoretical limitless value. And Bitcoin is the perfect reflection of that, since it's absolutely scarce and we have to share them amongst ourselves, amongst each other. Then there is a potential for them to become infinitely valuable to at least one person. I mean, value is a subjective thing. This is the core insights
right,
that leads you down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And, I think this concept of property itself is something that's so misunderstood in the world that, typically you say the word property, and at least in the US, people immediately think real estate. They just think it's land, right? And then they think there's almost like this blind spot where it's like, oh yeah, you just own the house. Like, of course, I have the piece of paper that says I own the house. They don't understand the mechanics behind that, like what enforces your property right in that property. And it's not just land, it can be anything. So this idea that property is not a thing, it's the relationship between the owner and the thing, and that relationship is preserved at the leisure of the state. And this is true for every form of property other than bearer assets, right? Something you can hold and defend and secure. That's very important, because then the screwed up thing is you have the state in charge of preserving property rights, but then it's also almost oxymoronic because itself preys on those property rights. It's like the thing that it's charged, its reason for existence, it turns around and consumes its own seed crop or something, if you will. And that's why I think it's just been we've had this civilizational boom and bust across history that hopefully Bitcoin fixes.
Yeah, and I know that that it goes even deeper than that reality is the relationship between objective reality and our subjective thoughts. What we experience is the relationship between those two. And you can't even know to which extent one creates the other. Right. You can't know if what's in here is measuring something out there, or if it's creating something out there. You cannot know to which extent that happens. And you like Rene Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." That's like a core, a good starting point. The only thing you can actually know is that someone is thinking, some entity is thinking something somewhere.
Yeah.
because the thought itself is proof of the thought's existence, but it's not proof of anything else but that.
Right.
So that's I tried to lay this out in the book, and I'm thinking a lot about it and trying to form some well, I'm trying to make it not too new ages ish,
Yeah.
but more praxeologically correct. And as I view it, there are, your brain sees these other entities that seem to function the way you function, like other human beings. That they behave as if their brains operate in the same way that yours does. That before you do anything, there's a value judgment in your head. You put that thing that you want to do on top of the list of things you want to do, and then you do it. Like if I want to take a sip of this glass of water, I do. But if I want to keep on talking, I do that instead. So now keep on talking came higher in my personal value hierarchy.
Yeah.
And you see these other entities, other people, and they behave as if they have these value hierarchies too. Now you can interact with these other beings in two ways. You can interact with them voluntarily or forcefully. So you can in effect trade with them or use violence against them. There is really nothing else. There's the exchange of information, which is trade, by the way. We're trading with each other right now. We're exchanging information. And not only information, we are exchanging a lot of things by just looking at each other. I can look at your, so there's so much you can extrapolate information from just listening to my dialect. I can see the art piece behind you there and start drawing conclusions which are probably wrong. But anyway, the point is there's a plethora of trading going on whenever we interact with another person. And like I said, the two ways we have to interact is the violent way and the non-violent way. And the non-violent way is, of course, the civilized way. And Bitcoin takes away the profit motive to a large extent from the violent way. And this is why I think it's so beautiful and so like why I can't stop thinking about it, because it will make the world such a better place that we can't even fathom the beginning of what this is. It's removing the need to act in violent ways or forceful ways with others.
No, so I agree completely, and it's that's what we've been locked into through pretty much our entire existence. And it's also what we've been trying to evolve beyond, right? With these concepts like rule of law, other means of nonviolent dispute resolution, arbitration, all these things, because violence ultimately is expensive. It's expensive and risky to both parties. So it makes economic sense to get beyond it, right? And we've made a lot of headway, actually, right? We're much less violent than we were as cave people, presumably. But Bitcoin is like that ultimate incentive to really take us to, like we said, the next level of civilization, or perhaps even the beginning of civilization itself. So one thing I'd like to throw out here is, like, you make the point, all action is an expression of value. Like, you can't even avoid it. You can't know it is in others, but we know in ourselves we're making a value judgment, and then we act according to that value judgment. You should probably check out this series I've been doing with Mike Hill on the book Leela.
Oh yeah, I've heard you talk about that book a lot, and I'm planning to read it. I haven't looked at that yet. I've seen your Hillebrand series, which I recommend to absolutely everyone in the world, and a couple of others. The one with that, I don't remember his name now, but another guy that talks about
John Vervaeke.
Vervaeke, yeah. And that's
this
an
is the
interesting
term
guy too.
We got from Vervaeke, actually, is the term transjective, which is the relationship between or I get I don't know if it's the relationship between subject object. It's almost like something transcendent of subject object. The example Vervaeke gave was adaptation. Like, is adaptation objective or is it subjective? It's like, well,
Yeah.
it's subjective to the extent that the conscious agent is choosing what to do and is being influenced by their environment, but it's objective in the sense that the environment has a real effect on the subjective decisions of the agent. So adaptation as a phenomenon is something that is neither objective nor subjective. It's transjective. It's something, and he makes this deeper point that all identity even arises, it's co-determining. Like, to be a dancer, you have to be dancing.
Yeah.
And to have an arena that is a dance floor, then it has to be danced upon. So there's this interesting thing where I think subject object gives us blind spots, and we go into that. The person goes into that in his book, and we just explore it.
I heard that, and transjective is a fascinating word. I like the word intersubjective, which Yuval Noah Harari lays out in *Sapiens*, which is a book I didn't like very much, but I like that idea, and how intersubjective fantasies, or whatever you may call them, is the very thing that elevated humans above all other species on Earth, because we could, that made us able to form groups larger than Dunbar's number, which is the maximum of connections you can have in your head, like the maximum amount of people you can know. If you look at bonobos or chimpanzees, they very rarely form groups larger than 150 individuals. But we could, because we could imagine that there was a god to begin with, or an afterlife. And as soon as there was ceremonial barrier and an afterlife, the sociopath leaders could fool the young 18-year-olds of the village to go to war and wage war on the tribe next door and kill them all, and a great reward would await them in heaven. So in that sense, by fooling people that their time wasn't limited, that they had an afterlife to look forward to, they could dilute the value of the perceived value of their lives, so that they would give their lives up for this supposed higher cause.
Interesting.
And I find that so scary, because every appeal to authority or a higher power or a higher cause in this sense, it is by itself diluting the value of your subjective meaning of life. You can decide for yourself what the meaning of your life is. You don't need someone else to tell you that. like Terry Pratchett said the problem with an open mind is that people would come along and try to put stuff in it. Yeah, and I will always say an open mind isn't worth anything if you're not intellectually honest. Right. And that can require you to slay a lot of old ideas that you had. And nowadays I view like the idea of an afterlife as existential inflation, if you will. Like how, and while it probably gave a lot of people hope, there was no way of proving if that hope was real or not, but their leaders could use that belief in other people for their own, to reach their own ends. To them, it was a means to an end. And the ends always justify the means. And so I think what the central banks are doing today is effectively the same thing, but they lure us in to believe that we can reach a higher state of being or happiness here and now in our own lifetime, if we just use their money and take the new loan and like keep staying in the fiat hamster's wheel, if you will. And it's basically the same thing. It's everything that controls other people starts by diluting the value of what that person thinks of his life, like his time here on Earth.
Mhm.
It's a regular fiat job is that too. If you get paid this sum every month if you just stay in this office for 8 hours a day.
Mhm.
8 hours a day is a long time, and most people should probably quit their jobs and start valuing their time higher
Mhm.
than that.
Mhm.
Because they're,
Right.
even if you have a high salary, it's probably not what your true worth is.
Right.
Everyone is worth something to someone else. You just need to find your specific purpose, and it's more valuable than you think. Yeah, I firmly believe that.
I agree with that completely. And it's bad. It's almost like we've conditioned ourselves to live in some form of captivity